this week's installment of Immigration for HR. I'm Sam Adair with the law firm of Graham Adair, and I'm joined today by my partner, Chad Graham. Chad, thanks for being here.
Hey, Sam. Good to be here.
Today, we're going to be talking about the PERM process and specifically the 5 things that we think all companies should know about PERM. PERM is the process that usually starts off the green card process for employees. And it's a process through which a company has to demonstrate that there are no qualified U.S. workers to fill a specific position, and for that reason they want to obtain a permanent residence visa for an employee so that they can be in that role long term. The 5 key takeaways from this presentation include that the company is responsible for setting the requirements for a PERM position. The Department of Labor is responsible for determining the prevailing wage for that job. There's going to be a pretty exhaustive test of the labor market that has to be done. Fourth, a manager or someone in HR at the company is going to need to review any applicants who respond to that test of the labor market. And finally, and unfortunately, this process takes a really long time, and we'll get into some details on that in a few minutes. But Chad, let's go ahead and start off. The first thing you do when you're starting a PERM application is you have to define the requirements for the PERM position. And can you talk a little bit about the responsibilities for that and how that works?
Yeah, so the important thing to keep in mind is that in the PERM Labor Certification process, we're dealing with the Department of Labor, and so the process is very different from the USCIS process. And one of the things the Department of Labor expects is for companies to really be in the driver's seat throughout the process. They don't want the law firm getting involved to set minimum requirements. They don't want the employee involved. So the law firm should be involved certainly from a providing guidance perspective, but should not actually be setting the minimum requirements. The other thing to keep in mind is that the employee needs to be able to meet the minimum requirements for the position. And so if we're saying this position requires a master's degree and 3 years of experience plus these 5 skills, we need to be able to demonstrate that the employee has that master's degree, that experience, and those 5 skills, and preferably they earned all of that before they joined the company in order to be able to qualify for the position. The final thing to keep in mind is that unlike other pieces of the process, the company is required to pay the cost for the entire PERM labor certification process, which can be cumbersome because it is the most expensive part of the green card process. While beneficiaries can pay for certain pieces of the process, the PERM labor certification is not one of them.
So I guess if the company is paying, they also have to own this process from start to finish when it comes to PERM. Once a company has established those requirements for a position, what happens next, Chad?
So the next thing is the prevailing wage. The prevailing wage right now is taking around a year. And so it's really critical that this be done correctly the first time, because if you get to the end, you get the prevailing wage back from the Department of Labor and there's a major problem, that's a significant delay to the case. And what I mean specifically is with prevailing wage requirement. This is where a law firm guidance is really critical for the company to be able to determine where the prevailing wage is likely to come in based on the job field and the level that the position will likely be placed at, and then determine where that fits in terms of the employee's salary. Because if it's way higher, that could put the company in a bad position to either have to pay that prevailing wage at some time in the near future or have to start the PERM process over. And so if it's determined that the prevailing wage coming back from the Department of Labor is likely to be high, then the company should look at an alternative wage survey and submit that with the prevailing wage request to hopefully bring that prevailing wage requirement down closer to what the employee's salary is going to be in the near future.
Awesome. And so once you've waited like a year and you finally get that prevailing wage determination back, you can proceed with that test of the labor market. This is a pretty involved process. Do you want to talk, Chad, about kind of some of the details of the requirements of that recruitment process we have to go through?
There are 3 mandatory requirements that need to be performed, and then 3 alternative forms of recruitment that can be done among a group of various options. So the 3 mandatory requirements, and this is the one that I think when we're old, Sam, we're going to be talking about this with our kids and our grandkids, and they're not going to be able to believe that we had to actually place 2 consecutive Sunday newspaper ads as part of the mandatory recruitment process.
Well, it just fits right with the narrative that we grew up before the internet existed, so that makes a lot of sense.
That's right. So the other two forms are posting at the job site for 10 days and 30-day posting at the state workforce agency. Then among the options for the alternative three are, and I'm going to read this, we're going to provide a list so that you don't have to memorize this, but I'm going to read through it really quickly. So there's job fairs, posting on the employer's website, job search website like Indeed, on-campus recruiting, trade or professional publication like IEEE, private employment firms like an outside recruiter, employee referral program with incentives, campus placement offices, local and ethnic newspapers, and radio or television advertisements. And the thing to keep in mind here is the Department of Labor has indicated recently that it expects a company's recruitment process for PERM to mirror its normal recruitment process. Maybe not be exactly the same, but for example, if the company never places radio ads for its jobs, but does it to meet one of the recruitment requirements for the PERM process, that can raise eyebrows at the Department of Labor.
Chad, I noticed you didn't mention a rotary phone as one of the recruitment options. Is that no longer available?
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't allow that anymore, so you'll have to use a cell phone.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so once we do a test of the labor market, presumably you're going to get some applications or some people who've responded to that test of the labor market. What happens with those when they come in?
Yeah, and this is one of the hardest parts because sometimes companies use these alternative forms of recruitment really with the goal of not receiving so many resumes because they have somebody that they want for the position. This person has proven themselves most likely, and the company wants to proceed with this person. So then looking at forms of recruitment that are less likely to bring in resumes, that's where a company can sort of run afoul of Department of Labor expectations. So the best thing to do is for the company to designate an individual who will receive those resumes and review them in conjunction with the minimum requirements for the position. The law firm should not be involved in reviewing those resumes. The employee certainly should not be involved either. And what needs to happen on those initial resume reviews is to see, does the person meet the minimum education requirement and the minimum experience requirement? And if they do, they likely need to proceed to the next step, which could be a phone screen. Sometimes we get the question of, well, this person has typos and misspellings all over their resume. We would normally disqualify a person for this reason. Unfortunately, within the Department of Labor context, that's not a reason to disqualify somebody. So moving to a phone screen would be a next step to actually review the resume with the candidate and verify that they really do have all the experience and skills that they're claiming and that they meet all of the other requirements in terms of willingness to accept the salary, being available geographically, and those sorts of things.
Thanks. I guess kind of lastly, this sounds like a lot. The PERM process definitely takes a long time, even longer than this video. But do you want to talk, Chad, a little bit to what the timeline really looks like from initiation to completion of a PERM?
So as we said, the prevailing wage is taking about a year. Recruitment is about 60 days. And then once a case is submitted with the Department of Labor, it's taking about 9 months right now to be certified. So we're talking about almost 2 years of total processing time. And the reason this is important, and this is something that we say time and time again, is that a company should look at its immigration program as an entire life cycle from start to finish, all the way from the initial screen at recruitment all the way through to receiving a green card and beyond. Because what can happen is at the recruitment stage, if recruiters are not aware of this issue at the PERM stage, they may bring somebody in that has 2 years of H-1B time because we've always done it that way and it's been fine. Well, now if you bring somebody in, they've got 2 years left of H-1B, you want them to wait 12 months to make sure that they're really somebody you want for the position, and then we try to get the PERM or an I-140 approval in place, it's going to be too late. And so that's where normally we would have advised companies start, with at least 2 years to go on the H-1B. Now we're saying it should be at least 3 years.
Well, that's certainly a long time. Thank you very much, Chad. Thanks for being with us here today. We hope that this has been a helpful review of some of the key points that employers should be aware of as part of the PERM process. Feel free to respond to this video with any questions or comments below, or reach out to us if there are things that you would like to discuss. Thanks so much and have a great week.